Today we're going to look at long division using two-digit divisors. However, in this lesson we'll start out a little bit easy in that the two-digit divisor will always be nice round tens. Alright, so the first one that we're going to look at is if we were given 240 divided by 30. Now the method that we're going to use is what we call method of estimation. So ideally, if we look at this, we can say let's round these to the nearest tens. And they're already rounded. So this is nothing more than 24 tens being divided by 3 tens. And so this is essentially 24 divided by 3, a much simpler problem. And so 24 divided by 3 is 8. Let's look at it in our typical long division format. And we would have started out over here and said, hey, does 30 divide 2? It doesn't. Does 30 divide 24? It doesn't. So the first place that I'm going to be looking is what is 240 divided by 30. And of course, we've done the work before. And so I will be putting in my 8 above the 0 in there. So on the quotient line, we have the 8 directly above the units of 0. In our long division, of course, we're now going to ask what is 8 times 30. And when we work that out, we get exactly 240. Subtract, and it's 0. So our final answer for 30 into 240 is 8. You can always check your answer. And we check by writing or finding this product. And we end up 8 times 0 is 0. Do remember when multiplying, we multiply starting from the right and move to the left. So 8 times 0 is 0. Now 8 times 3 is 24. And so we know that our answer for 240 divided by 30 was simply 8. And that's correct. Alright, let's move on, and I'll still maintain multiplication, or rather division by 30, and let's look at another question. So, if this time we ask what is 360 divided by 30, we can do the same thing. I want to really practice this division by estimation to the nearest tens, so I'm going to go directly to my long division and quotient bar. Alright, so starting off, we ask, does 30 go into 3? It doesn't. So I'll just put a 0 there to hold the place. The first place that we'll be looking at is 36. So let's even do a little rough work over here. And 36 divided by 30. Alright, the 36, however, is not to a tens. I haven't rounded it. So here is where you want to, anything that is not a tens, we're going to round to the nearest tens. So I'll bring back the 30. But the 36, in the units place, the 6, if it's greater than 5, we round up. So we end up getting 40. This is just 4 tens divided by 3 tens. We can just really ask the question, what is 4 divided by 3? The answer is 1. I now come and multiply 1 times 30, and that's 30. I subtract. I get 6, and next step is to bring down. Alright, we are continuing our rough work. We now have 60 divided by 30. This is good for us. It's actually already rounded to the nearest tens. So we'll have 6 tens divided by 3 tens, or simply 6 divided by 3 is 2. Right, so if we should put a 2 here, we are now taking that 2 times 30 and we get 60. We subtract, and that's 0. All right, let's continue here. So what we're saying is that 360 divided by 30 is 12. And as we said, you can always check it. I'm not going to check it here, but I leave it for you to check that the product of 30 times 12 will give me 360. There is no remainder in this case. So let's continue. If we should be given, let's say that we have, I'll do something different. 661. 661 divided by 30. Oops. All right. Doesn't matter that the dividend is not a nice tens. We're still going to progress the same way. So the divisor is 30. We have 661. And now we're going to go through and do each step as we did before. Does 30 divide 6? It doesn't, so I'll put a 0 there. The first place that we'll have 30 being able to go into is 66. 66 divided by 30. All right, if it's not rounded to the nearest tens, and again we're rounding to the nearest tens because the divisor is to the tens. All right, so the divisor was 30 or 3 tens. Rounding 66 to the nearest tens, that would be approximately 70. So that's 7 tens divided by 3. 7 divided by 3 is 2, and without going over. Again, we don't care about the remainder right now, so I'll put 2. And here we go. 2 times 30. We'll end up with 60. Subtract, we get 60. Carry down, we have 61. 30 into 61 would be, again, 2 times. So we can see that here, even though this time 61 divided by 30, if I should approximate, this is 60 divided by 30, or 6 tens divided by 3 tens. 6 divided by 3 is 2. So again, we have 2. Let's put it in a different color. Right? And now we are multiplying 2 times 30, which we did before, and we got 60, and with a remainder of 1. So if we look, what do we get? Is this right? So 661 divided by 30, we're saying our answer is 22, remainder 1. Later on, when you do fractions, you would write this as 22 and 1, which is the remainder in the numerator, 1 over 30. How do we check? To check, we are multiplying the quotient times the divisor and then add. So we'll do quotient times the divisor plus the remainder. Earlier, the remainders were 0, so we didn't have to do any addition. What was the quotient? Quotient is 22, the divisor is 30, and then we add the 1. Right, so I'll leave that for you to do, 22 times 30, and then you add 1 to that answer. All right, and you should end up with 661. You will end up with 661. All right, let's move on and do maybe 1 or 2 more. Okay, remember at any time you can always pause the video, go back and look, check. Just try to see that you have this all down. Let's actually do this. 960 divided by 40. So I'm getting out of the 30s now. And let's look. My divisor is 40. I have 960. And again, I'll ask the question, does 40 go into 9? It doesn't. The first place that it will go into is 96 divided by 40. So here's my rough work. Round into the nearest tens. This would be 100 divided by 40. So again, we can write this as 10 tens divided by 4 tens. After a while, you can just forgo that and literally go down to, say, this line and say 10 divided by 4. 10 divides 4 evenly twice with remainder. Again, we don't care about the remainder. So 2 is what we'll put on the quotient line. And now 2 times 40 is 80. I subtract. I get 16, which is smaller than 40. So I can continue. I bring down. And now we have 160 divided by 40. This is easy. Both of these are to the nearest 10, so we can just look at 16 divided by 4. These were the tens places. Right? There are 16 tens in 160. 16 divided by 4 is 4. So I would put a 4 on my quotient bar. And next I am multiplying 4 times 40. And we end up 4 times 40 is 160. Subtract, and there was no remainder. Right? Finally, if we want, we can, not if we want, but you should check that, say 24 times 40 will end up giving you 960. Using the 0 to hold the place, I'm now multiplying by the 4s in the tens place. 4 4s 16, carry 1. 4 times 2 is 8 and 1 9. So absolutely sure that the answer to this is 24. Right? Let's do one more just to make sure that you have it. And again, this is all because we're dividing or using divisors that end with a 0. So let's look at another one, number 5. 900 and let's say 48 divided by 20. All right, so let's set this up. Okay, 20 does not divide 9, so that's 0. The first place that we will, or first numbers that we will ask how much does 20 divide it, will be 94. Right? Now, if we again look, we're dividing by 20, 2 tens. We want to find out what is 94 to the nearest tens. It would be 90. So 9 tens divided by 2, or 9 divided by 2, would go 4 times without going over. So we'll have 4. I will now multiply 4 times 20. 4 times 20 is 80. I subtract, and I get 14. It's smaller, and I compare that what's left, it's smaller than 20, so I may proceed to bring down the next place. Oops. And, sorry about that. And we get 148. 148 is now going to be divided by 20. We don't want to write out our times table or anything like that, so we're going to look to approximate or round each of these to the nearest tens. Looking at the digit 8, if I'm rounding the units digit, it's closer to the next tens, so I would round up, which means I add 1 to the tens place, put a 0 in the units place. I have 150 divided by 20. Using this as 15 tens divided by 2, You might remember 7 times 2 is 14, so 15 divided by 2 is 7 with a remainder. And we now proceed. So if I did this 7 times 20 is what I'm looking for. 7 times 0 is 0, 7 times 2 is 14. When we subtract, we get 8. Right? So my answer would be 47 remainder 8. If we are checking, we're going to ask what is 47 times 20. When we do that, remember the place value, we're just really multiplying by the 2 in the tens position. So I put down that 0 to hold the place. And now 2 times 7 is 14. Carry the 1. Do not write 1, 4 there, and 2 times 4 is 8. That's not correct. So going through that again. We're starting. 2 times 7 is 14. I put the 1. I carried it. 2 times 4 is 8 plus 1. We get 940. And now we're going to add the remainder. We had a remainder of 8. So we're adding this. And we end up with 948. So we're absolutely correct that 948 divided by 20 is 47 with a remainder of 8, or 47 and 8 out of 20. All right. Later on, you would not, if you're doing fractions, you would even reduce if you know about that yet. And 4 into 8 would be 2. 4 into 20 would be 5. All right, but right now I care just about this top part.